Welcome back to another Agency Connect one-on-one. I'm Sunir Shah, President of the Cloud Software Association and CEO of AppBind. We are talking about how to bring the digital under control so your agency can get under control. I'm on with Dr. Ryan Lowe of EnergyHill Consulting, who has a lot of experience working with both big brands, small brands, figuring out what agency life is. He's been through all the ringer, left, right, and center, and he has wisdom to impart. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sunir. I'm really excited about this. This is good.
So tell us your history. I mean, it's not just about EnergyHill. You have a longer history. Introduce yourself.
So my wife and I started EnergyHill back, I want to say it was 2012, but to be fair, I don't know any different. I was born and raised in Chicago, moved south because of the weather. I hate the snow, for those of you listening that are...
I'm buried in Toronto right now.
Yes, I'm sorry for you now, but the reason I moved is just because I couldn't take it anymore. So I moved south, went to Savannah College of Art and Design for my master's in digital fine art, and I loved it. I absolutely loved Savannah, but it still wasn't warm enough. So I kept moving south, ended up in Tampa. I started out when I first moved in Tampa, early 2000s, as a teacher. I was doing a lot of freelance at the time, but really I got burnt out because I was doing everything, probably looking back now, it was wrong. I didn't know it at the time, but I was doing everything wrong. I loved Flash design and development. And so that was kind of my thing that I really did a lot of work for. But when I moved to Tampa, there was a teaching opportunity. I did have my master's, so it was in interactive design and game development. And I said, you know what, let me take a teaching job. Let me see if I can, get into this. So I got into it and I loved it. But then I had the itch of, I'm not designing. I was teaching and I love teachers. Teachers, you rock. But it was not the same. And so shortly after about 4 years, I was reached out to by a local agency that became a huge agency to help with their creative direction, art direction of some of their key accounts. Ranging from, as you mentioned, Sunir, Walmart, Best Buy, all the big ones. Pretty much, if it's a brand you can think of, I pretty much probably have worked with either the brand side or the publisher side. And I absolutely love the work. It was fantastic. And I did that for, I want to say, 4 years. But then I also got burnt out just because it was, I had a client, they were opening up a new big box store in France. And I was the creative director for that. And then also on the West Coast, I was having to jump on calls in San Francisco. I lived in Tampa. So I didn't really sleep. And my wife and I were starting to have kids. And, we always joke, I would kiss them when I'd come home from work. They were already sleeping. I'd kiss them goodnight. And then I would be on the call at the office with France. So it was like I never saw them. So it was really bad. It lasted probably about 6 months more than it should have. But in 2012, my wife, Gloria, she said, we gotta mix this up. Let's start something together. You've done this in the past and let's go. And that's when EnergyHill was started. And it means to create. That's, a lot of people ask that. So that's what it is. So is that background for you? Is that good?
It is. I think what I'm trying to get to, maybe in fits and starts, is I'm thinking about what I'm doing with this podcast in 2022, especially after the pandemic. I mean, we all faced our existential realities. Was this thing, like you were trading time for money, and the money eats up more time because money is money. And that is a road to hell for every agency because that's a fundamental product. All you have as an agency is time. And if you don't know how to create leverage or products around that as an agency, you're going to die and not scale, or you're going to work too hard, or you're going to go manic or crazy or burn out. You burnt out more than once, right? Yeah. Because this is bad, but you figured something out now with EnergyHill. And so this is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. So, and it's an awesome statement in the sense that I always tell, whether it's upcoming designers or agency owners, don't get into that wheel of trading dollars for hours. In a sense, you're limiting your life to, it is worth X amount of dollars per hour. Who would do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I mean, as an owner, you can't actually plan for retirement and scale with that. As a designer, you're going to get burnt out, repeated again. So just bounce from agency and continue. I mean, and again, I love New York. My sisters they were in the design space. They lived in New York, and that is talk about that. That's it. That is exactly what happens there. You literally, as a fashion designer, you bounce from agency to agency and you burn out. It's not healthy. So what Gloria and I came up with is says, hey, we're never going to sign up and get on that path. Instead, we really do a good job of filtering our clients and making sure they're a good fit for us. And they understand that, hey, our rate, our cost, our investment, always use the term investment, but internally you can talk cost and profit. But when you're talking with a client, use the word investment, is going to result in this. And don't ever promise anything, obviously, but make it where, hey, listen, why do you want us to be charging you an hourly rate? People always ask, what's your hourly rate? If I share that with you, there is no incentive for us to be fast. There's no incentive. So why would you do that? Instead, and I hate to dumb it down to an oil change, but when you go get your oil changed, do you care that you're paying whatever, $50, $100? I don't know, with this economy, maybe it's $150, but do you care that you're spending that much? Or do you care that it's done in 50, 60 minutes? But we can't always do that. We always want to think, oh, well, I have to pay this, whatever, X amount of dollars. And I always say, when you're as an agency owner or a brand firm or whatever the niche you're in, don't ever get yourself stuck in an hourly rate. And if you are, now I always say that internally you should have a blended rate. You should know what your margins are. A lot of people, there's a stigma that, oh, the margins are so tight with SEO companies and design companies. My question, not rhetorical, but is why? You know what the costs are. And I would say instead, get so good at it as an agency or as a firm that you can charge more and you can increase your margins. But you are still going to know your blended rate. You're going to know what your cost is. And if you don't, you should figure that out. If our cost to do X, Y, and Z is whatever, $100 an hour, we know that's our cost. Well, then why are you not, in your mind, bidding out projects that are at 200? That's 100% value. You should be doing that. Now, you might need to take time and build your portfolio to get to that point. But to be honest, I'm going to say that if you're talented as an individual agency owner and you get to the point where you can say, hey, here's my rate, you're not going to say, oh, okay, brand design or logo design, whatever the case may be, and it's a little package of deliverables, and you say 12 quantity hours 12 equals whatever. Don't do that. Instead, I like the approach of saying, hey, here's phase one. Phase one is my interview process with you. It costs $3,600. Phase two is I actually start to research and concept and do a contextual design, and we do some interviews with your customers, and this equals $2,400. Phase three is we package up the logo and all the different brand elements and put them into a nice, concise, tight package, and that's whatever, $2,000. I don't know what numbers I just threw out there. But the point is, as someone, I always look at it from your customer, your client's perspective. Who's going to say, oh, I don't want to do phase two? You know what I mean? No one can take out that element because it's a phased approach that allows you to say, here's our package rate based on designing for phases. And that can be applied to anything. So I take a phased approach where it's good for us because it lines up scope. It lines up the statement of work. It's also good for your client in the sense they see, oh, when we're done with phase one, we're going to have all this already. Phase two adds on and it builds up even more. Phase three, completed project. So I always, if I can, expand on that, I always say, go phase route. Do not do deliverable line item route. That is always going to cripple you. And to be honest, if a client says, well, no, we only do hourly rate, you need to decide if that's a fit for you then. Because we just say, hey, we want to be efficient and we have a process in place, really tight scope where we know exactly. And let's say, okay, the problem with phases is, well, after the client sees phase one, they're so excited. Now they want us to do their website. Great. That's called a change order. That's called, hey, that's a whole different project that we can scope out as well, but it's not part of this. And so I always make sure I tell, agency owners that, listen, build in your phases, keep that scope tight. It helps you align that scope with your schedule as far as when deliverables will be hit, and then hire the best designers because those are that's your team. That's your army of professionals that know what they're doing to help you execute on those phases. Long-winded answer, but I hope that helps the conversation.
I just kind of own it. I was a bad agency owner. That's what I would say. This is how I ended up with AppBind, because I got into so much trouble around the digital management. I had to build a product for it. But that's me being self-serving. The thing that you mentioned that really rang with for me is there's so many different agency models out there as I'm learning. But the way I ended up doing it myself, I was at OLARC, CMO, OLARC live chat. My third kid was coming due, and I just every time I have a child, I go into existential terror space because you've no idea what that child is going to be like, healthy or sick. You've no idea, right? And
Nope.
so I'm like, what is my life going to be? And then I always evaluate what I wanted, and so I basically hired my replacement, and then built up the team, and then basically coasted my way out of that company with no plan. I just I'm leaving without a plan. So I started consulting because I also wanted pat leave. That's the other thing, because I'm Canadian and they're American. We have 18 months now in Canada. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
say.
exactly right.
So I started working for consultants, trying to learn. And what drove me crazy was that some of them would sell like $50,000 packages of pure anxiety, and clients would never bite it. But what ended up working for me was very similar to what you said. This is leading to a question, but I found that I would sell them a $2,000 workshop, as a getting to know you discovery project, and then I would phase out. It would always be the same thing. They'd hire me for partnership stuff, but they didn't know who their target customer was. So I do the analytics, I do the research, and then this would be $25,000 work phased out. But what got me into trouble consistently, because I was also I'm a curious monkey. New projects would emerge, like you said, this website thing that I hadn't figured out how to do yet. So I was like, sure, I'm happy to do that for $15,000, and then of course it'll be like $40,000 worth of time to learn it. But then once I learned it, I got better at it. Do you do this? Are you set now with your kinds of projects you do, or do
Yeah,
you ever try something new?
you need to learn to say no to things that here's the problem. As creatives, we kind of know the Adobe suite. We know these different suites of tools. And it's like, oh, I could just do this. Ooh, yeah. A video is something we don't do anymore internally in-house. Instead, what we aligned ourselves with are awesome video partners. Jail Video and Trinity. They're fantastic. So it's best to align with people that do it really well, and that is their business model. And so whenever that comes up in a project, say, hey, we need you. Don't do it. That's not a change order. We don't do this, but guess what? Here's a phenomenal video agency in the area. So video, I'm not going to say it's our kryptonite, because we used to offer video services, but we don't anymore because it really takes away from what we're focused on. And so I think you're onto something that great there, is that yes, you could learn how to do it, but is it something that you want to have your vision, mission, and core values align with from a service you offer your clients and partners? If the answer to that is no, don't do it. Instead, find a really good partner. I'm going to say that, accounting, I can't stand accounting. What agency owner is going to try to do accounting? They shouldn't. They should find a really good accountant and stick to what they do. But guess what? I guarantee it, 90% of the businesses that we're helping as agency owners need accounting help, or they're, especially if it's a small business in the small business space, it's a hot mess. That doesn't mean you should start offering accounting services. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, yeah, stick to what you do best and learn to say no, but also say, hey, no, we don't do this service, but guess what? Here's Jordan's number. Here's his contact information. He's fantastic. Tell him I sent you. If you want to jump on a quick email or call, I can introduce you.
In your business, you don't even subcontract. You're just send them right over and just stick to
Don't subcontract. I don't recommend it. Subcontract work that does align with your mission, vision, core values. If it's a key service you're doing and you just don't have enough people, you're tough on space. But really, I wouldn't. I would avoid it. I would say find good partners and There's a lot of people that are doing phenomenal video work out there. Video is an example I'm using because
sure.
We don't do anymore. But I mean, it could be, anything that doesn't really fit your model. I'm going to tell you right now, we could have been much faster growth as an agency if we would have just stuck to design or brand or marketing. The reason we did it is because part of our mission is using those three conduits to help businesses and organizations. So, every year we ask ourselves, should we pull off this X, Y, or Z? And every year it's the same answer. It's part of our mission. So we're not doing it. Those are what's staying. What we're doing is we're pulling off tactics of those three things.
So those things line up. We mentioned it pre-interview. So you mentioned Michael John Day. Can you tell everyone who that person is and what inspired you to go brand design marketing in that order? And that's how you structure your projects too. So.
Yes. So Michael John is phenomenal. I would recommend, follow him. He's just God's gift to the world when it comes to being a prior agency owner in the design, branding, and marketing space. So definitely I'm plugging him just because he's awesome. The guy's great. But when it comes to that, we made a conscious decision to not niche our business, but instead niche our services, value propositions that we offer organizations. And those are brand, design, marketing. So when it comes to brand, I feel it's the foundation of your organization. Agencies owners will know it's not a logo, but just in case, if you're a new agency owner, it's not the logo. It encompasses what people think of you internally, your team, your staff, your clients. and what people think of you externally who don't know who you are. So it could be your target audience, it could be, your local community government official, it could be everyone outside. So when it comes to brand, it's making sure that's solid. I think the mission, vision, core values are so important there. And so we really help align businesses so their brand is solid. Design is our second value prop tier that we offer. And that is, okay, we have a solid brand. We want a website, or we need a app design, or whatever the case may be. Fill in the blanks from a design standpoint. It does include development as well, but it's focused on the design process. And then third, but not least, is when you have a good brand, you have a solid design of X, Y, or Z, you want to shout it from the mountaintop. And that's where marketing comes into play as far as, hey, how do we get the word out about what we're offering to the world?
Very interesting. This is the ladder strategy of growth. Like as you get a teaser in, and then you build a ladder with a client. And like commercially, how much retainer work are you doing, would you say?
Retainer, let me think about that for a second. I would say it's about, I'd say 50% retainer, about 40% new project work, or big project work. It could be, when I say new project, current clients, or new clients, but about 40%. And then 10% is other things. It could be SaaS. It could other things that we have kind of that are just, I'm going to say we're trying it out. It's kind of our incubator play space where we have, designers and developers have the ability to kind of, hey, let's do something new and see if it makes sense to add it to our services. And that has grown to the point where one of our little incubators, little things that we were doing, really now is its own company. But that doesn't mean we stop doing that 10% of revenue for new things, I believe innovation is innovate or die.
That's actually interesting you mentioned that, because the way the narrative was going so far, that you had locked down after all this experience into the three things, but you're still creating room to play because you have
Absolutely.
to. Because like the
Yeah.
market's always changing. I was wondering what you were doing here, because you're not like TikTok is here now. What are you going to do about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to do something.
You have to. And honestly, innovate could be something as simple as, man, we've had 7 clients ask if we do this. Should we do this? Is this something that we can fit seamlessly into our design initiatives? We've made a full transition to, the world is split between Canon and Nikon. And I think the second tier would be Figma or XD. I'm just going to say it. And I like all of them. But the whole idea is we've switched to XD as a family, as a tribe, just because of the fact we're all in Adobe Suite and we can all jump in and start knocking out and working on a project together. But if you go back 2 years, we weren't. We were using Photoshop and Illustrator for everything. So if it wasn't for that 10% of play area, we would be stuck as an agency doing things that were counterproductive and not conducive for us to being faster. Quality's still there, but speed is important, that we can crank out great work for our clients and our partners. So
Amazing. Okay, by the way, one thing we haven't actually talked about is, who are your clients? Would
yep.
you say? Like,
Good.
who are you serving?
Yep. So about, I'd say half of our business is in education. So it deals with schools ranging from K-12 to higher education. So that's about a good split of half. My doctorate, I know you introduced me as doctor. I always need to clarify that. I'm not a medical doctor. My doctorate is in business. It's in business administration, focus in marketing. And our clients, I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's just because I do have a heart for education. I feel terrible what's happening right now in our world when it comes to kids. But honestly, when it comes to adults, when it comes to 21-year-olds that are not sure what to do with their life, and school is it has to innovate. Talk about innovate. I think schools are behind. I don't think all these platforms out there that help, students collaborate in a workboard, on a dashboard, it's bad. I think Zoom has a long way to go. I think all these tools we use, they still have a long way to go. So I think higher education is hurting right now, but I still think there's value there. The value is not necessarily on the skill. The value is on the accomplishment and the completing something. And also the network you build while you're there. I recommend to any entrepreneur that thinks, hey, someday I want to own an agency, get on LinkedIn now and connect with every person in your classroom now. So by the time you graduate, you have a good network. But education is, I'd say, half. The other, I'd say, let's just do the other half, is ranging, let's do 30% is construction industry, in a sense, building large manufacturing accounts that build something at a scale that is large. So a bridge company. So for example, a alarm company that helps the construction industry. So that'd be about 30%. And then 20% is, it can range from technology companies, insurance companies, firms that, provide amazing B2C service, but they provide a really excellent, and they just don't know how to get out there, and it's tough for them. So, and I'm also want to encourage, let me do a quick plug for agency owners. There are tons of clients out there, and unless you're niching yourself to a specific, we're going to work with, healthcare. Okay, you're going to, but what in healthcare? Is it insurance companies? Is it practices? But I don't want to discourage that there are so many clients out there. I always say there's bad clients and there's difficult clients. The bad ones, go. Okay, learn how to exit stage left with those. And there's a lot of tips I could give on that, but exit bad, as in abusive of your time and your effort. If you're not sleeping at night, those are bad. Difficult are, man, they're good. They need a lot of your effort to help educate them on the design space. But make sure you delineate between the two.
First I hire agencies at AppBind because I need one, and also we serve agencies. So I have this thing where I try to be the worst client ever. That's my new motto when I work with them. I want more, faster, better, cheaper yesterday. But every client wants that. They're always freaking out. That's the only reason they hire an agency. If they could handle it, they would have done it internally, but they can't. So I'm curious. I ask this question to everyone. From your client's point of view, what are they freaking out about? And what do they say, just take care of it for me? What are you taking care of it for them? From their point of view, how would they describe that?
It depends. I mean, in some cases, it could be a lot of times they ask for things. And the reason I brought up accounting is because we got that question all the time. And let's go down that path. Why were all of our clients, this was circa 3 years ago, 4 years ago, all of our clients were asking for accounting, bookkeeping, CPA type work. I think that's the best position to be in as an agency owner, no matter what you do. Because here's what that proved to us. They like what we're doing so good for X, Y, and Z, design, brand, and marketing, that they're saying, can you also take care of this headache for us? I'm going to answer your question by saying, get in that position where they're coming to you for your personal recommendation. Yes, they want you to do it because they love what you do, X, Y, and Z, but they're asking for your recommendation or your relationship connection to someone that is going to be at your caliber. So I'm going to say, as an agency owner, get to that point.
Do you know why it happens? I learned this actually when I was consulting, and I thought I was selling partnership, strategy, and execution, analytics, whatever, but it wasn't that. I was their therapist, basically. And so clients, they cannot talk to staff, they cannot talk to their business partners, and they cannot talk to the investors. You're the only person who is theirs. And in the beginning, they're cagey because they don't trust any agency. But if you get to a trusted point, you're the only one they can tell their anxieties about. And I started telling this to people during the getting to know you, like before sales things. Like, listen, it doesn't matter what I deliver for you at all. You are clearly, your business, you just feel out of control. And the only thing that matters is by the time end of this engagement, your business is back under control and you feel calm. That's success. Failure is if I increase your anxiety in any way. And that was 100% true, 100% of the time. This is where I got into trouble, solving problems I shouldn't have been.
As long as you can have your own boundaries on, hey, I actually don't know X, Y, or Z, but I can find out for you, or I can ask some of my amazing video partners and see what they think. As long as you can be disciplined enough to do that, you're fine. But you can't get into trouble if you say, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. No, don't. Because then what happens is you start to hurt the trust that you've gained. And you don't want to do that. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to you.
I remember once I was doing a landing page build out in WordPress. I'm like, why am I doing this at $250 an hour? This is stupid. I should have hired a WordPress agency.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. A good business agency owner is going to find people who not only love it, but they're fast at it. That's it. Now, quality is also a big issue, but I'm not talking about quality. That's a whole portfolio review process, training. What can you do to make people? Now, let me touch on that real quick. Agency owners, I always leave jobs open. I'm always looking for people who are rock star talent. We get on average, we just did this little study the other day, we get around 2 applicants per day for all of our jobs. That's without running an ad. We don't really run ads anymore. But I'm going to say that as an agency owner, spend about an hour a week looking through those applicants. You should have an automated process in place but always look out for that gem, that rock star. Because if you're doing everything right, the way to scale your business is make sure you still have rock star talent. And the way to do that is you got to dedicate some time to look through. So my wife and I determined a long time ago, back in 2012, we're always going to give at least a minute to a resume and a portfolio. In the creative space, I think it's very easy to judge creative. If you know what good design is, literally in 15 seconds, I can tell what a portfolio, if it's good or not. And then I can tell if it's a fit. If it's good, is it a fit for our clients and the clients we serve? But really that dedicated time is important from an agency owner standpoint.
It's a really good point. I
Yeah.
want to get to a couple other
Yeah.
things before we go. One thing that I guess you didn't really answer, but maybe you what your clients perceive you as, but maybe it'll come out of this question as well. But one thing you mentioned is you do some projects, some retainers. I'm curious because this is a really key point. How do you convert? Like, what are the retainers, and how are you converting clients into a retainer
Yep.
basis? Like, what goes into those retainers? Because that's actually the secret to scalability. Is
Yep.
never do a project that you can't convert to a retainer, right?
Yep.
That's really so.
100%.
So what are
Yes.
you doing here?
I mean, typically it's the trust. I don't look at it as anything other than they trust us. We have a very strong foundation, what we believe. And our website's going through a redesign process, so it's not there now. But, we are a faith-based organization, so we make sure that hey, if they need help outside of my gift, we have some clients that they're going through craziness right now. We have an in-house chaplain that we have available for our clients, and that helps them. I mean, it's not just for us as a team, as a culture, our team, we're doing great. I mean, there's always problems, but we're doing great. But our clients aren't. So how do we help them in which ways? And again, it's not me, but guess what? I have a chaplain. And that's that third party vendor that can come in and plug in with them and, talk them through it. And it's all confidential. Back to the retainer model. You're right. It's impossible to not scale. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's very difficult to scale as a design service agency without having some form of retainer. And it can be done. I always challenge even my vendors and partners, why can't you have a monthly amount where you can just kind of not worry about overhead? You should get to that goal. So anything on top is gravy. It's profit. But I mean, I think even the retainer can get to that point where there's profit. So anyways, with that said, what we do is we typically do the larger projects are upfront and kind of like not upfront as in full pay. If we go back to the phase approach, we have phase one, this amount's due to start and to finish phase one. Phase two, at the end of phase two, this amount's due. And phase three, when we finish, this amount's due. So I usually do 20, 30, 30, 20, just because whatever the amount is, let's say it's $100. Let's just pretend here. $100 at first, they have to pay us 20. Then they pay us 30. Then they pay us 30. Then they pay us 20. Real easy. So the whole idea is that just phase out your scope of work and also your pricing for the bigger projects. However, I always say, what are you going to do after the project's done? As an agency owner, you're partnering with them. I mean, well, you need to decide if that's the way your agency is. That's the way we view us. And so after we're done with building them a website, well, building a website is one element. They're going to have a lot of SEO effort, social design, all these other tangibles that are recurring work. Yes, the website patch and all the little things that would be done to the website, but that's maybe a couple hours worth per month. But man, we could write articles. There's all these other things that you could do that you can package in a retainer that isn't based on hours. It's still based on work. What will be delivered this month for your organization? And we break it down granular. We follow the HubSpot method. There's a lot of good CRMs out there, but again, it doesn't really matter what CRM retainer model you base it on, but just figure out what is the work that you can create and you have resources to fulfill that work, package it, make sure your margins are set healthy, and go, and then start to market that as a package. I always want to lean into, you have to have systems in place. I'm going to say that because again, I came from the creative side. I didn't know the business side as well, but in 2012, I didn't have all the systems in place. You need a help support system in place. You need, a billing hours system in place. So there's all those things that you need that you can spend time on as an agency owner to get up to speed. But you do need all those systems in place so you can make sure you're making wise decisions.
Are your retainers entirely labor based, or is there like leverage around the tech stack?
It depends. It just depends. I mean, I would say most of them are, but it can be based on results, straight results. I'm going to say those are less just based on, what we are as an agency. We are a design focused agency, but I think an agency that says, hey, we're going to be results based, fantastic. I mean, I think if we're going to generate, let's say 100 leads a month, and yet if we go over, do you still want them? Cool, go for it. Like, I think there's flexibility there as far as how you would run that. So.
Interesting. And then you mentioned, this is the last question, because we're also, the last part of organizing digital is the tech companies. So you're a HubSpot, CallRail, Google partner.
Mhm.
Like, how do you bring those relationships in order? And there's always a love triangle, right? Because the software vendors want your customers need to own their subscriptions. You need to manage the whole thing. You just need to get it organized in a timely manner. Like, what do you do to bring order to your relationships with these software partners?
Well, I mean, obviously, most of the partnerships we have are on annual. Are you talking about the billing? Or are you talking about how
Well,
we
I
do?
mean, obviously, I selfishly care about the building because of
Yeah,
AppBind, but I'm actually more interested in the human side of it. Like, so, because part of the retainer basis could be managed services, managing tech services. Part of it can't. I'm always curious where agencies are right now, because every agency will eventually be, well, not every, but a
yeah.
lot of marketing will become marketing tech agencies eventually. But you're a design agency, you may not be there. I'm just curious where you're at.
So, I mean, I would say that what I'm seeing a lack of in this space, let me talk about what isn't good in this space, is the customer service. I know why they do it, but they have this adoption rate. They want, 90% adoption rate is success or whatever their KPIs are. I don't really care. I don't know what their KPIs are, but I know, let's just assume it's 90% adoption rate of a company they onboard. At a certain point, usually after 6 months or a year, and again, we've been with Salesforce, we've been with all the big ones and all the little ones and everything in between. And they all have really good value propositions that they put out. I'm going to say that what I liked about HubSpot was their adoption kind of process.
Yeah.
Their exclusive. I mean, I'm not sure if it's exclusive, but their certifications and things that you can gain to help you all work and function on the same page. I think that was huge. I think that was, to be honest, one of the determining factors, other than it was as big or in a parallel with Salesforce. I'm going to say, as an agency owner, though, you got to be ready to use the tools. I don't care what tool it is. You got to be ready to adapt to the tools that you're given. There's other options to CallRail. To be honest, I think Google should be in that space. They already are call tracking, but they should do more and have a better platform for it that it doesn't. Why, as a marketing agency, do we have to use CallRail? Like, there's things that just Google is not organized, and we can't have, white labeling. There's little basic things that they should be doing. So from that standpoint, I'd say that there's a lot of need for the adoption, but also after adoption, what happens then? And I think that's where there's the gap of, why do we have a term called churn? The reason we have churn is because at some point, an agency like myself gets upset and says, you know what, we're done. We can't go anymore. And that's really sad for these fantastic platforms. I can go down the list
Mm-hmm.
that don't have that relationship strong enough where they can not avoid churn or get that number as low as possible. So I'd say that's where there's a lot of room for help on the tools and platform standpoint, where why aren't they spending more time? They spend a lot of time on adoption, but then it's like, oh yeah, then you have your help system and your ticketing system. Well, wait a second. Why can't we have an option to have a monthly call with our, whatever account manager or whoever? So I think that those models will change as far as adoption, and then you use the ticketing system. Wait a second. What is that next level? And I think there's some SLAs, service level agreements out there that do that, but I think that's going to become more of a standard for the small, medium businesses as well as the large enterprise businesses.
So, if some software company want to reach out to you based on all this in your model, and say, "Hey, let's be partners," what piece of advice would you? This is the last question. What
Yeah,
would you get offer them?
I'm going to go, just because we kind of know this space from the standpoint of, we have an app out there and a tool out there, but from the standpoint of, I would say, what are your average tickets per month look like? What are your SLAs? Let me see your SLAs. What is your service level agreement? Are you responding within 15 minutes or is it within 2 hours? It's not a wrong answer to say 2 hours or to say 24 hours or 48 hours. It's not a wrong answer. The problem is, how is your platform set up? Where do you have a full knowledge base? Do you have the ability for a person to figure it out on their own without having to set up a call? So there's a lot of things that I'd say that when it comes to those inbound calls that we get, and we get them all the time, I'm sure every agency owner gets them, is that what how is your foundation set? I'm going to go back to what I said about having all your systems in place. What is your ticketing system? What are all the things that, do you have in place in order to make it worthwhile for us to try? I also think trials, I don't like trials, but I know that my team does because they want to get it in play, and I agree with them. I just don't like them. I like to just make a decision and go. But I'm not the target audience. Typically, I know that I'm not going to use the tools that the team is using day in and day out. So I think a trial does make sense. And I think demos are always going to be king when it comes to showcasing.
Yeah. What's funny to me is like how many agency owners have said, what do they look for in a software partner? The same thing they value in themselves as an agency owner, about how they present themselves to clients, because the software vendor is an extension of you. Actually, it's funny.
Yeah.
With that, how do people get a hold of you after this?
Yeah, EnergyHill.com. My email, I don't care. I'll even put on my cell phone. EnergyHill, Ryan, my first name, RYAN, at EnergyHill. My cell phone, 813-464-1171. My team always freaks out. I don't care. 813-464-1171.
Amazing. Thank you so much for imparting all the wisdom of like ups and downs and ups again. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this.
Sunir, this was really fun. You take care. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.